This is the only way that we're able to interact now. So I'm so used to looking at a screen.
You're a London-based artist, right? Mm-hmm. You released the first EP, Creole Practice, in 2018, and now a new one, Alias. Can you tell me more about Shygirl, the project? Why that nickname first? Because you don't seem very shy in your lyrics.
It's so funny because it's like such a complete accident. Like I never, when I first had this name, I was DJing with a friend of mine, and we just did it under that one name. And I think sometimes when something comes naturally, it was almost as a comment on like men's expectations, like two girls coming to DJ at fashion parties, like and then when I started making music, I didn't think I was going to keep making music, so I just said, yeah, like let's just call it this, whatever. I just didn't even think about it, and now it feels so real.
And let's talk about your lyrics, which are quite naughty. You talk a lot about sex and sexual interactions. Why is it important for you to talk about that particular topic?
I think for a lot of the tracks, I use sex as like an analogy or like a metaphor, because most of the times I'm talking about my feelings, or I'm trying to express how passionately I felt about something, or or tremulous. And I think sex is such a visceral thing. Everyone has their own experiences, good, bad, embarrassing, whatever, like we all have our stories. And it's something I know, I've discovered my voice almost through sex, my own unique perspective on life, through my relationships with people and how we experience each other. So like, it's very much an important part of my own self-discovery. And so when I think I'm introducing myself musically to people, I'm like, well, this is how I came to these opinions, and maybe it's good that that about me. I think it's an important part of my confidence almost. So many female artists, we talk about sex the same as a lot of men as well, but the female narrative is way more interesting because women haven't been free to talk about it for so long, and without judgment, and I think it's a challenge almost for people as an audience to hear us talking about sex and not judge us purely on the basis of that we're sleeping with people. Why is that still such a commodity? Why can't you see how I feel behind the subject, That
was my other question. Like, is it a way to free women also?
Yeah. If you feel, if it's still a problem, if you're bothered by listening to sex, then none of what I'm going to say is going to be for you. You're not going to get to the other messages before you can deal with this, because you're obviously not ready yet. And I think that's why it's like, I don't mind if someone doesn't like talking about that, if it's too crass for you, because, life is not without the darker things to talk about. My feelings are dark sometimes. Sometimes I'll say things that someone will be thinking and no one will say it, Like, I'm not scared to say those things. I think it's good. There should be nothing that you can't have a conversation about. Why are people so scared of the conversation? You have to question yourself sometimes.
I like bad boys and I know they love me. They say I've got a type, I just think melody. It's cold on the streets, or so they tell me. I keep the conversations brief, the intense by your sleep. I like bad boys, I know they love me. They say I've got a type, I just think melody. It's cold on the streets, or so they tell me. Keep the conversations brief, the intense by your sleep. Different places, but the roads.
But do you still have some boundaries? Do you tell yourself, like, I'm not gonna talk about this, or I can't say that, or?
I think I have boundaries, I guess, because, even with the lyrics, even with the fact that sex is an analogy for something, that's a boundary because I'm not being so explicit. Also, like, I'm telling a story, like, I tell a story to my friends, like 3 different friends, and I tell it 3 different ways because I'm telling an interesting story, you know? Like, so, and that's the same thing. I think, you know, I'm an entertainer. Like, I love to make people laugh. I love to not take things seriously or to find the humor in a dark situation is funny to me. So, like, I think that's in that music. Like, there is, you know, I find there's small boundaries. Probably my boundaries would not be the same as other people's boundaries, I think. But but like I think I will always want to push myself to feel uncomfortable because I'm challenging. Why do I feel uncomfortable, you know? Like what is it? Is it am I scared of what someone will say? Or am I scared that they will see who I am or how I feel? You know, like there's some things I think the only boundary I have probably is talking about things before I have the answers or before I have the conversation to follow it. Like maybe not the answers because you might find the answers with someone in the conversation, but sometimes you're so in it, like you're in a relationship or, you know, family drama or whatever, and you can't see it for what it is yet until you're out of it. And I think that's why a lot of the stuff I've written is in retrospect.
You seem to be like very comfortable with the fact of having people being uncomfortable listening to your music.
Yeah,
you seem to play with that.
I think I've been honest with myself in the music. So, you know, if someone's going to be uncomfortable, then you're uncomfortable by me. And I can't change that, you know, I'm not going to change myself to make you feel comfortable. Like I don't have to be friends with everyone. So it's like, that's fine. And you don't have to like me. Like, I think I will grow and I will change, and maybe I won't be talking about sex in 10 years' time because I'll be over it, but whatever, you know, I had to do this period to get to another phase of my life. You know, I wasn't talking about sex when I was like 12, so it's fine to talk about it now. But, you know, everyone's thinking it, like everyone's having these thoughts, and it's such a big comment on society about how we think about sex here. You know, like there's everyone in different places thinks about it differently because that we have different allowances for it. You know, we're so privileged here to be able to talk freely, and for me to, you know, I'm not in some places, you know, it's punishable by law. I wouldn't be able to make the music that I make. So I have a voice that other people don't. So I will use it. Like, and especially in the earlier EP, you know, I was using a lot of slang and drill terms that are like common with a lot of the male rappers, but because I'm saying it, it's interpreted sexually straight away. Like I'm using like violent terminology, but it's just sex. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. Like I don't care. Like if you wanna hear it like that, but I find that so funny. Like, you know, as a woman, I can say that and it's sexual, but as a man, you know, you take these terms and it's violent because there is a parallel there between the words. And I just see it as me like kind of trying to understand how people perceive me and deciding if I like it or if I don't like it, you know?
What about, because you say myself, but at the same time, you're releasing an EP, which is totally built on 4 characters, personas, and so that you've been like creating like, are they different faces of yourself? And
it's not me being different, it's me just like, you know, letting sides of myself come through more than the other sides, like what's appropriate. You get it when you're with certain friends, you know, you have friends that you'll laugh with about certain things and friends that you laugh with about other things, you know. And I think that was me just being like cutting myself up into pieces that were digestible for other people, because I credit myself as having such a broad spectrum of interests and, you know, headspace about who I can be and the limitlessness to myself. And I was like, in this record in particular, who was I being in this? And then they became personified naturally in how I was envisioning it. And the names came last, but, you know, the characters and the energy, it was all coming through sonically anyway. So I was like, okay, what matches with that visually each time? It's like what everyone does when they're looking at a record, you know, when they're pushing something, but they just like funnel it into like one whole look, rather than me being like, no, you know what, I can be so many different things simultaneously. And I think other people can be too. Like, why do we keep boxing ourselves in when we're so many things, you know? So like, and that's kind of what this with the girls was. It's like the whole thing is kind of playful for me in that I'm able to explore myself like that. It's completely narcissistic perception. Like I can do what I want and I'm my own muse. But also, you know, some people, they won't know what I even look like. And the first thing they'll see is these like animated versions of me. And I just think that's fun, like to really play with people's perceptions of you, or, you know, what you hold dearly. Like some people, their whole perception of themselves is what they look like, you know, and if you look different, they lose their mind a little bit. And for me, I'm just like, I'm so interested to see myself in all different ways, change my hair all the time, you know. The thing that is constant, and the thing that is constant across the EP, is my voice.
There is a very glam thing in that way of perceiving art, you know. And I thought a lot about David Bowie, of course, for the mask and the creation of the personas, etc., but also of Björk, of course, and Cindy Sherman. Are they influences for you?
Yeah, Cindy Sherman especially. You know, I love her work, and I grew up like looking at her work, and it really speaks to me. You know, this whole idea, like, and that's why I love like film and stuff. And getting into like actors fascinate me, and like, you know, just we all play at life. You know, there is no rules of how to live, but we all like seem to read the script of like what is acceptable and what isn't. And like, I'm as much, you know, trying to provoke the conversation, I'm also asking myself the same questions. Like, I don't know everything. I don't know what, you know, like even when I made the record, I had no intention. When I made the record, I was still exploring what I was doing, you know. Like sometimes I'm in the studio and I write a whole song and I'm like, where did that come from? I don't even know. Like it's just like a force within me. So sometimes when I'm looking at it in retrospect, I'm trying to make sense of things in the way that makes sense to me, and that is visually.
And so you co-founded the label Nux. I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Nuxie. Yeah, that's actually Chloe.
Why did you decided to found a label together? You could just have signed somewhere.
Yeah, I think at the time, you know, people were asking us. I think I'd only put out like one song, and I didn't even know if I wanted to make music properly. But like people were saying that it was good, and I was like, okay, maybe I can make music now, whatever. And then, but I was like, I don't know how to work. What do I need? What do I want? I don't know. How can I work with someone when I don't know what I want? Like then I don't need to work with anyone, you know. Like, so that's kind of how it started, when we were all kind of making music, and we were like, I can't see where we need someone yet, so let's just keep doing what we're doing. Like I had a full-time job that was funding everything, and anything, and then I'd been DJing, so I was like, now I like, you know, we have our DJ money, we can like fund it. And also we had so many friends that were creative. Like I did all the graphics, like we were just, I was like, we can do stuff. Like I was making stuff before this, so actually we're not lost. And, you know, until we see where we need help, and I really wanted to, I knew we would eventually, like in all our endeavors, you know, there was like the money for one, like for a big one. But at the time I didn't want to just like, you can't just throw money at things and it be good. So I was like, I want us to work on being good and actually having what we know, what we want to do.
And do you have the feeling that you're kind of producing the kind of the same music with Okalu and Coucou Chloé, or is it very, very different in your head?
You can put us all in a playlist together. It would take you from one mood to another, but we could be in the same playlist. But I you know, my own music taste is so varied, and I'll see parallels everywhere. You know, even when I'm mixing a set, like the genres are being blended from like Mariah Carey to, you know, Dizzy Rascal. Like it's all really all over the place. Like I'm definitely a throwback person. Like I'm always playing old tracks, and like you can hear the nostalgia sometimes in all of our music. So I guess there are parallels, but we're all very different people, and that's what used to amaze me about working together, because we are like, we don't always agree on everything. We have different perspectives on stuff. So when we do agree, I'm like, oh fab, then it must be the right idea, because like
you were talking about Mariah Carey and Dizzy Rascal. Can you like explain to me do you have some heroes in music? People who were very, very important during your teenagehood, or
yeah, I definitely,
now?
like growing up, you know, I used to listen to Bjork. Like there's one track by Bjork that I used to listen to on repeat, which was Hunter. I used to listen to that every day. I really thought I was in my own movie when I was listening to that. I'd be like, okay, the normal life doesn't exist. I'm in my movie. And then like Moloko, I loved. Missy Elliott, I loved because my mum used to play her record before she'd go out like with her friends. So it would be like, oh, I know it's like time to get ready. Seal, I used to love like Kiss from a Rose. Like there's so many things, especially like when I think about the music my parents put me onto, like Aphex Twin and stuff, and Bjork were from my dad. But he also like introduced me to Destiny's Child and like Mary J. Blige. And then like my own interest when I was really on a tangent, like by myself, it was like a lot of Tramp. And like this is when I was like 12. Like I wasn't thinking about like the club at all, but it's so euphoric and like it transports you, you know. And I really like I couldn't relate to that looking at the dreary like greyness of London sometimes. Like you want to be transported into this like complete, you know, everything's pushed to the limit, like in the production. And I think that's the same way where with Aphex Twin, it wasn't so much the music, it was the visuals for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think my dad had this music video like DVD and it was all like Alan Cummings like stuff. So it was like the Bjork video where she's like the robot, and and the one that Come to Daddy video from Aphex Twin, and Frozen with Madonna. And I used to watch that all the time, and I was like, this is it, this is what you want, this is the visuals I imagine with this music, you know. So that's why the relationship between visuals and music has been so important to me, because I need, you know, I get really uptight about it because I'm like, I imagine it like this, it must be like this. Because I wish I had no imagination sometimes, because I'm like, I'm cursed because you're trying to build a picture that is like, you know, it's straight from your head. And sometimes, and you know, it's been one of the most stressful parts, I think, sometimes when I've had to, you know, delegate, because I was so used to making everything myself with the earlier stuff. When you have to start trying to like communicate your imagination to someone else, and like people don't understand why you're like no, and there's no reason, like, you know, like no, that's not right, when you're like, how can it be right when I'm making it up? Like,
and do you remember how did you start going to clubs? How old were you?
I think I must have been like 17 when I started going out. Like we was like going to like pubs and stuff, and I was like, most of my friends were into like jazz, and I wasn't really that into it, to be honest, but like not in the way they were. I was like, it's like whatever. But you know, we'd go out together, and then and I didn't really, you know, find my sweet spot with clubbing until I'd finished uni, I guess. And like I went to university in Bristol, and I had a really great time there, like really good like nightlife and everything. And there's loads of free parties, and there's all these like hippies and stuff that live there. But that was more about just getting wrecked. Like that was just like, wasn't really about the music. You don't go for the music, you just know it's gonna be a good party. And then when I got back to London, and I was working as like an assistant to Misha Notcut, who is now works with me on creative. She used to run this club night called PDN. It wasn't as this like kind of POC queer space, and they used to have like loads of great DJs from all over the world that come through, because it was just real community, and ended up feeling like such a family party. And I was like, this is what it should feel like, you know. I shouldn't feel like I'm knocking off like weird guys' advances, or like, you know, shady drunk people in the club. Like it was just because everyone was happy to see each other. Everyone was like relieved that the week was over, that they work in fashion, and they're like, ugh. You know, you're like happy that it's done. And I was like, that's that made me see the club differently. I think that's why some people are like, oh, like, it's just all club music, or yeah, you like that life, because they're thinking about drink and drugs and being aimless, not about the community or the feeling of, belonging somewhere, or, knowing people, but actually making friendships, like, people, like, you see them around, you see them on set, or you've gone to this thing, but then something happens in the club and you're friends now, and I don't always like being in a lot of spaces, because sometimes I don't like the crowds, I don't like the type of people that are there. So I think I'm very particular about the type of places that I go to, because the energy from people really does affect my good time. Like, it doesn't matter if the music's good, like, it's whatever. So yeah, I miss that in this period. I miss having that collective sigh of relief, like, shaking off the night, and like, oh my god, loads of random things happen. Was you there last night? Like, it's like being at school sometimes. It's like you have no responsibilities, you just go out.
Do you have a favorite DJ?
I have a few. Like, Total Freedom, I really want to see play more. Like, he played one of the my unreleased tracks with me and Arca the last time I saw him, and I was like, oh, I felt so special. I was like, oh my god, I'm really making music, because like my favorite DJ is playing my song that isn't even out yet. I was like, but I really love like LSD, XOXO as well. There's so many people. Like, there's another girl, Manara, who's a London DJ. Like, if I could I would really love to do some nights and curate some more lineups, because I think I have a good ear for what works well together. And I would love to, I do take a lot of pleasure from creating spaces for other people to enjoy themselves. Like, that's why I used to like hosting like afters at my house, because sometimes I would look up and I would see so many people talking to each other that would not have met before, because I've got loads of different types of friends, and it makes me feel good. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I helped facilitate this. I feel like, the love is in the room, and that's kind of what I get from clubs as well. Like, having people exposed to hearing music in different ways. That's why DJs are so fab, because they take tracks that and love and present them to you in a whole different realm sometimes. So yeah, I'm gonna give that same wonderment to other people.
What about the fact of being normal, being not normal? Like, you have a track which is called Freak. How is it to deal with being maybe a freak or not, or normality, what is normal, what is not normal?
I think
I kind of with all these concepts.
I've accepted from a pretty early age that I'm not normal. Like, I never felt, I was just like, I just never felt like, I could relate. And I, like, now I have people I feel like I can relate to, like, and I'm so happy. But I was telling my younger sister the other day, like, she's like 11, and I was like, sometimes you're just not gonna like get on. Like, you don't get on with everyone. You exist together, especially talking about school life. All these kids in school together just because they live near each other. It's not because you have the same desires in life or like look at the world the same. It's because you live near each other. So it's like, how are you expected to get on with people just because of that? Like, later on in life, when we choose the jobs we want or where we live and all that stuff, then we manage to find people we relate to, because we've actively made choices in our lives towards that. But when I'm thinking about it, a long period of my life, I didn't feel like I could relate to anyone, because I was not interested in the things that other people, or I wasn't seeing things the way other people were seeing it. Like, I've always kind of been a bit more reflective. I felt like a lot older than my years for a long period of time, until that kind of catches up with you when you're a teenager and you realize you know nothing. Like, it's fine. But for a long time, I felt like, I'm really close with my parents, and we have a lot of frank and open discussions, and they treated me not like an equal, but definitely like an individual capable of those conversations. And like, I think that maybe set me apart from a young age from a lot of my peers. And it's probably why I'm so reflective now. Like I do credit my parents for a lot in that, you know, because that is the environment I grew up in. But outside of that, I look at who I'm around now and the family that I've chose almost, you know, my friends and my peers, and how that's shaping me and like, you know, giving me the confidence to do things. Like even this, you know, putting yourself up to be dissected all the time, you have to be prepared for what that brings up. Like it's almost like therapy. Like,
but how did you come up with that kind of way of asserting yourself, you know, having confidence?
I had realized by this point that people were making assumptions of me, whether they were right or wrong. They were making assumptions. So I was like, I need to feed more information into this so that the assumptions are going in the right direction and I'm not miscommunicating myself, because that would leave me in an uncomfortable position, you know, like I feel like sometimes with live shows and stuff, you know, and even with music in general, you know, I see a lot of people make generalized comparisons with me and another Black female artist or whatever, and the only comparison is that they're another Black female artist. And so it's like, get a sense of like minstrelsism almost, when you're like, am I so interchangeable? Is that how we are digested? And sometimes, you know, to combat that conversation in my own head, I have to make sure I'm doing things for myself that assert that, you know, and assert my own personality, acknowledge where the similarities are, but also assert like where I am different. So I think that's where I can feel comfortable, because, you know, a lot of other places I play, you know, a lot of the countries I've been to, some of the crowds are like completely white, you know, and like that shouldn't be a thing, but sometimes it is a thing, because I don't want to be just digested on the facade of everything. I need people to know that there is, you know, something behind everything as much as that influences it, you know.
Are you mad sometimes at the fact that all the crowd is white?
No, I'm not mad. Like, I definitely prefer a more diverse crowd. Some places just don't have the diversity, you know, and also some of my music doesn't reach the places that I would wish it did, you know. Like there is sometimes segregation in the way, like what's acceptable sometimes in certain groups and others, you know, like who's going to go to the, if you know there's going to be like a majority white crowd, are you really going to go and there's only like two of you or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, that's just what it is. And like I guess the more I make music, the more it will reach a broader group of people. And I don't dislike the fans that I have. Like I actively, you know, reach out and speak to the fans that I do have, and I appreciate that. It's just like more of a social commentary thing, you know, like I definitely do hope that I see more diverse crowds. Like I always want to, like you never really want to see I've been lucky actually that, you know, my music has been widely accepted in the queer community, which is fab, because I really feel like that's where I'm coming from with a lot of it. But at the same time, like you want it to be for everyone as much as possible, because I don't see like I'm just making music for like one group of people. But I definitely think, you know, if it is speaking to you, then maybe we're coming from the same place with it. I would be surprised to go to a gig and it just be all like straight white men, you know, listening to my music, because I didn't think that's going to happen.
You still have doubts.
And also when you're making anything, you have to think like, does it need to be made? Like, does this need to exist sometimes? Like, especially with visuals, like, does another video looking like this need to be made? Like, it's been done. Is it going to add anything to the story of visuals out there? Just because I enjoy something doesn't mean I need to insert myself and become part of the story in that sense. I need to recognize what is my voice? What do I need to say? Where am I unique in my perspectives, you know? And I do question that. And like, you know, even when people say, going back to people talking about sex as a thing that's been spoken about, but you know, like I do have a unique perspective on it. I realize that when I have conversations with other women, and I realize some other women haven't realized certain things that themselves, or the possibilities, or, you know, kind of continue misogynist ideals in their own way of treating other women. Like, I know that that narrative is needed. It needs to be heard by other women so that other women move on and progress from the misogyny that we live amongst, you know? And also, like, I didn't have, growing up, someone like me talking about the things I'm talking about. It just didn't exist. So, like, why should I stop existing just because there's a few more of me now, you know?
And if you had to do a featuring with someone, who would you pick?
I love when Arca raps. Like, she is so good, and she doesn't rap enough. Like, she needs to rap some more. Like, that's what I said to her in Ibiza. I was like, I'm gonna get you on a track and we're gonna rap, and that'll be it. Like, it's gonna be fab. So yeah.
And what would you like the most to do at the end of this crisis? What is the first thing you would love to do?
I really want to go to a beach with clear blue water. Like, I need that holiday again. Like, every time I need to be out of the city to get some like perspective. I think I just want to be on a hot beach with a hot guy. For like a minute at least, for a second, and then I'll get back into the studio again. I can't wait. And then I'm playing in Paris next year, so maybe I'll see you there.
Hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.